Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Sempebwa, working with Talo Oil as the supply chain advisor. I wish to welcome you all to this National Content Supplier Development Forum, a webinar arranged through a webinar, of course, as part of our compliance to the ongoing COVID-19 prevention measures, and it will be on business continuity. It's being held online. This is the second one we are holding online. In the past, we've had these forums held in workshops, in open forums, but again, as mentioned earlier, we can't have that now because of the COVID pandemic. At this point, I wish to share some webinar guidelines, and this will be followed by the safety moment. Rosette, could we have thank you. The first guideline for us to have a successful webinar is we kindly request that you mute your microphone and video by clicking on the buttons or icons that have been shown in the caption below. Whenever you're not speaking or you're not presenting anything, and this should be maintained, observed throughout the meeting. The second guideline is that do not share your screen, and this you will have to do by by not clicking on the icon that shows screen share or share screen. The third guideline is you will type your questions or comments in the chat section, and this, please, when you do type, share with everyone so that they can be seen in the public gallery, and keep them simple and to the theme. Also remember to indicate your name, company, and to whom the question is addressed. And again, if you go to your interface, the Zoom interface, the chat icon should be visible. Questions shall be answered during the questions and answer session, which is at the one of the last parts of the last segments of the webinar. So please post them there and wait for them to be answered at that time. Please do not post private conversations in the chat. And also make sure that your internet connection is stable by closing all other applications that could drain the connectivity or the data on your machine or laptop. With those few guidelines, I would like to also share with you a very brief safety moment consistent with the theme of the day. Today, in the webinar we'll be sharing something on business continuity. And more than ever before, I think business continuity for us during this time is very pertinent, given the disruptions we've all experienced at personal level, but also at business level. I'm sure everybody on the call or in this webinar can attest to the fact that over the several couple of months since we had COVID land into the country, or indeed be declared worldwide, there's been massive disruptions in so many aspects of business. So the safety moment is on the case for business continuity during this period. So as many of you may have noticed, there's been an upsurge in COVID cases in Uganda in the last couple of months, especially following the reopening. And this upsurge has not spared the business community. The news is filled with reports of entire businesses being shut, or their employees being quarantined because majority of them or all of them have tested positive. It's in the service industry, it's in the production industry, it's basically everywhere. So again, when this has happened, you notice that there's been a disruption in how to continue. Imagine you're running a business and the tests you run show that your entire staff, as you have them, have been impacted or have been found to be COVID-19 positive. But also by extension, even if it wasn't your business, imagine that your supplier or your supplier's business is the one that is in that predicament. Certainly it's going to cause a disruption because it won't be business as usual. And if you've not planned for it well as a business, it presents certain risks and vulnerabilities that could ultimately end in either you closing business or having to work at a fairly constrained level. So what is the call for us as business? There is a need to design a tailor-fitted business continuity plan for your business to enable you, one, assess the level of risk and vulnerability to your people, your processes, and the partners that you work with in business. And once you do this, then it will help you develop an effective risk and contingency system or plan to counter the risks that have been identified and the vulnerabilities therein. A case in point is, assume you run a business that a service industry, in the service industry, you provide a service. Where are you most vulnerable? What points of your business are likely to be impacted if say you were to be impacted by COVID? And are those aspects or elements of your business insulated? And if they are not insulated, and God forbid, or you find yourself having to deal with COVID, how do you ensure that you minimize the exposure the business has? And there are four key business pillars that should be assessing or looking at broadly, and this would be your people. Are you providing a safe working environment for them? Are they using safe means of transport even away from work that do not get them to interact or to be exposed to COVID? Things like processes, your buildings, machinery, stock and raw materials, are they insulated from any potential shocks? The partnerships you have, be it the suppliers, your customers, are they, do they have, do you view a vulnerability there? And if yes, how best can you support or insulate or try and protect those partnerships? Because ultimately, if they are impacted in any way, then it rolls back to you, the business, and it will impact you in so many ways. So again, with the assessment of those key pillars, then the business can try and develop a business continuity plan that identifies that helps identify the key products or services that the business will require, and again try to find mechanisms that protect them from shocks as a result of COVID-19. And where you can't completely insulate, then develop a fallback position. evaluate the extent of the impact of disruption, assuming you were to survive a disruption, your people, employees have been found tested COVID positive. Who do you go to? Who are the key? I mean, the key people you need to survive, and how do you protect them? And if they're out of positions, then what next for the business? What should the business do to ensure that they do not uh, extensively suffer as a result of that disruption? Then also list a few actions that you need to put in place to insulate the business or to try and shock any potential negative impacts or impacts from COVID-19. And then once you list all these, put them in a simple plan that you fall back to in the event that you find yourself in a position that has to deal with a COVID situation. And with those few pointers, we hope that as business, I mean, at business level, we can put in place a tailor-made business plan or business continuity plan that helps you survive through this pandemic, as we wait and hope that a more lasting solution will be found. Ladies and gentlemen, that is on the safety moment. Moving on swiftly, it's my honor and I'm pleased to introduce you to the next speaker, who will also be our moderator, Mrs. Cynthia Mpanga. Mrs. Cynthia Mpanga is the Corporate Affairs Manager at Standard Chartered Bank and serves as the Public Relations Advisor to the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum. She has 15 years of working experience in communication and marketing and is a past president of the Public Relations Association of Uganda. She's also served on different boards in her career, and she has international exposure, having worked for Standard Chartered Group in various capacities, including Gambia, Kenya, and Tanzania. She has also managed major projects like organizing the Nairobi Marathon on 3 different events, the communication and PR for one of the biggest marathons on the African continent. With that, I ask that you, ladies and gentlemen, give your full attention to Mrs. Cynthia Mpanga to lead us through the next segment of this webinar. Over to you, Mrs. Cynthia Mpanga.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. That was a very comprehensive and elaborate and very kind introduction, Peter. Thank you very much. Sometimes I keep wondering whether it's me they are talking about. But it's a beautiful morning, and we are very, very happy and thankful that you've managed to tune into this business continuity webinar. It is going to take exactly 2 hours, and we have a panel of very distinguished speakers that are going to address us on business continuity, which is, as you will agree, a very topical issue right now for the Supplier Forum. And I would really love to start by appreciating Total Uganda and Uganda Chamber of Mines, Total ENP, Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, and TALO for organizing this second Supplier Forum for its distinguished suppliers and the general public. It's very timely, it's very important, as we've heard from Peter, giving us the context there. So as I've mentioned, the theme is really business continuity. And so you'll hear from different speakers on what you can do differently. And they have different expertise, different experiences, different knowledge, and it's going to be very interesting. So the agenda for the day, as you have seen, I won't really go through it. It's right there on the screen, but we'll have the welcome remarks, the webinar guidelines, which have already been done by Peter, and then we'll go right into the opening remarks, which will be done by Rosette Komgisha, and then we'll have some remarks from Petroleum Authority of Uganda. Alex will take us through that, and then we'll have the introduction of the speakers and panelists. I'll get back to that when that slot comes in, and then presentation on the theme, and that will be done by none other than the famous Mr. Ochichi, who I'll introduce in more detail later on. And then we'll have perspectives on the theme by a panel of 3 distinguished speakers, and then we'll have a Q&A session. So as Peter mentioned, please feel free to post your questions as the presenters go along, and we'll share them with them at the end of the session, and they'll address them. But I'm sure if there are more questions than we can handle, we'll find avenues to make sure that you also get feedback on those using other means or platforms. And then we'll end with closing remarks, and that will be the end of our webinar. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward for a very interesting, educative, and mind-opening webinar this morning. Without further ado, I will invite Rosette Komgisha to now present the opening remarks. Rosette? Rosette, your microphone is muted.
I apologize for that. Yeah, I'm one of those who are still adapting and getting used to technology now that we're using it so much. So thank you, Cynthia. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rosette Komgisha. I serve as the National Content Capacity Building Lead at Total E&P Uganda. So as Peter said, this is our second supplier workshop webinar. The first was held on the 5th of August with the theme of managing risk in business. So today's sessions on business continuity are meant to, build upon what we had started with. And this is with the objective of sharing appropriate information that will enable you as suppliers to run stable and successful businesses, mostly while we are going through this COVID pandemic, and also while we are preparing to take part in the upcoming oil and gas projects. Now, regarding the projects, as we were informed in the previous session, and as we always emphasize at Total, they are of significant importance for the Total Group, and the group remains confident in the progress of this Lake Albert project, as we witnessed by the purchase of the additional interest in the project from Tullow Oil. And following this announcement, the company is currently waiting for official government approval of this transaction. And also, while we are simultaneously working on conclusion of all the other prerequisites that we need to be able to arrive at a final investment decision. This is both for the Lake Albert project, which we know as Tilenga, we know Kingfisher, and the associated crude oil pipeline, which is the ECOP. So, all in all, Total is committed to the development of these projects, and we are working to achieve this as soon as possible. I won't say much, but I'll just say some brief words regarding the theme of this webinar. Peter has really highlighted it and its importance. And we all know that in the oil and gas sector, business continuity has always been important. But in this current situation we're living in, it has been accentuated due to the effects of COVID-19. Businesses have been affected, economies have been affected, individuals have been affected. It's cross-cutting. So ladies and gentlemen, we hope that from today's discussion, you will gain an understanding, building upon what you may already know or learning new aspects, but really getting a detailed understanding of critical aspects that are related to doing business in the oil and gas sector, and also the tips and ideas that should enable you to safeguard your businesses, sustain your day-to-day operations through this pandemic, and also lessons that you can apply in the future in case of any other unexpected economic downturns. We look forward to your participation. Please post your questions in the Q&A, and we look forward to a successful webinar. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you very much, Rosette, for those welcome remarks. And without further ado, I now invite Alex to please also speak to us. Alex is from Petroleum Authority of Uganda. Alex?
Thank you so much, Cynthia, and thank you so much, Rosette, for the opening remarks. My name is Alex Biamkama, like Cynthia mentioned. I'm the National Content Officer at the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. For us, we are actually excited to have this conversation about continuity. It is something that we've been engaging with key different stakeholders, because we know as the sector is affected by different aspects. Today, you probably have an issue with COVID. Tomorrow is going to be an issue with the prices. And we know that the resource is finite. So there's going to come a time when the phase goes down. So for us, as the authority, we've been having this conversation. Very excited that today we are dedicating a conversation on this business continuity. We'll just go straight to our presentation. It's a brief introduction about what the PAU does, and also look at just an overview of the project. Rosette has tried to highlight a couple of aspects for the project. We'll go a little broader, look at the entire project and the different aspects to it. We'll also look at the continuity and sustainability in the oil and gas sector, something that I've mentioned that we've been having conversation about. So just quickly, who are we at the PAU? The PA is essentially the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, and our purpose is we exist to contribute to Uganda's socio-economic transformation through efficient, sustainable petroleum resource management. And our vision is to be a leading petroleum regulatory agency. And our mission statement is to regulate and monitor the petroleum sector in order to create lasting value for society and contribute to Uganda being a sound investment destination. And for emphasis, our regulation role covers the upstream and then the midstream. We don't go to the downstream. So for regulation, the aspects of development, the aspects of exploration, those that fall under upstream, we regulate them. And then the aspects of where we have the pipeline, we have the refinery, those also fall under the jurisdiction of the PAU. So this is just a snapshot of the projects. We are going to have this conversation on business continuity, but it's also important that at the back of our mind, we have these figures. We have the appreciation of the magnitude of the projects, and go further to appreciate why we need business continuity, because if you're dealing with such magnitude of projects, you definitely need to be up to the task. You need to have your business continuity aspects in place. You need to be able to withstand the shocks that you will definitely encounter throughout the business as you provide different services, as you participate in this sector. So as a country, we have reserves of about 6.5 billion that have been confirmed, and of those, we can ably recover 1.4 billion barrels of oil. And our exploration rate as a country has been very, very impressive, which is at 25%. The world industry standard is usually 87%. So you will see that we the world standard is actually 25, and we have achieved 87%. So you will see that we are doing extremely well as a country. About the investment that has been made, if you look at the exploration phase that went up to around 2016, there was a combined investment of about 3.4 billion US dollars, and about 28%, which is close to about $1 billion, it's around 900 million US dollars, was retained in country. And in the next 4 to 5 years, we expect a total investment of about 20 billion. And below there, you can see the different projects that feed into the 20 billion investment. We have the development of the oil fields that are moving into the development phase. These are taken forward by the two companies, the three companies, that's Talos, CNOOC, and Total. Rosette highlighted that Total is at the tail end of acquiring Talos interests. We have aspects of the supporting infrastructure that will be able to support the development of these fields. We are talking about the industrial area. I'm sure some of us have heard of the industrial area that is being set up in Kabale. We have the airport that is also being set up in Kabale. We have what we call the oil roads. That's about close to 700 kilometers of tarmac road. All those are meant to support the development of the sector. Under the upstream, rather the midstream, we also have the refinery, which is meant to cost about $4.5 billion. It's a 60,000 barrels per day refinery. We also have the EACOP, which is the East African Crude Oil Pipeline that stretches from Kabale to Tanga. It covers a distance of 1,443 kilometers. It is a 24-inch heated pipeline that is being taken forward by the key parties, Total and the JV partners. We also have a new round of petroleum exploration, which is being taken forward by the two companies, that is Oranto and Ama Energy. They are currently doing exploration, and we are very hopeful that in a short while they'll be able to transition into development after confirming commercial reserves. And again, we are into the second licensing round that is being coordinated by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. We expect it to be concluded at the end of this month. So from that, also expect more opportunities. We expect more companies to come on board and start prospecting for more resources. And all this will create about 13,000 direct jobs. And those are just direct jobs, but if you look at the cumulative jobs, that is the direct, the induced, and then the indirect, we are talking about 160,000 jobs, which is very impressive. If we could go to the next slide, Rosette. Thank you. So there we looked at just an overview of the projects that we are currently taking forward. And as earlier mentioned, I talked about the discussions that we've had with different stakeholders. The aspects of continuity, the aspects of sustainability are very key to us as the PAU. And it is a conversation we've had for some time. We all know that the resource is finite and it has its peak, and then it slumps and goes down into the operational phase. If you look at this slide, you'll notice this graph, it has a peak. And at that peak point, you have about 13,000 direct jobs that we talked about. Now, that is usually during construction phase, which is around 3 to 5 years. Now, after that peak period, then you have a bit of a slump, because at that point, the operation phase has kicked in. A lot of construction has been conducted. A lot of studies have been undertaken, and then now you're into operational phase. So there's that slump. So as participants in the sector, we have to be cognizant with the fact that as we go up the peak, we'll definitely come down, and we need to be able to manage our operations to be able to absorb those shocks that will come with the slump into the operational phase. You will see that at the point of operational phase, we have about 3,000 jobs. That is a whooping reduction. And then the 20 billion that we talked about, the 20 billion dollars investment, the bulk of this is usually going to come through the construction phase as well. So lots of these opportunities, you have a lot of operations, you have a lot of companies coming on board, you'll have a lot of businesses coming on board, providing different services, and they're going to be very busy in that short period of 3 to 5 years. And then after that, you have a bit of reduction in the activities. And again, we also need to manage that. So at the PAU, how have we been taking this forward? What kind of conversation have we been having with the different stakeholders to be able to manage aspects of business continuity and, of course, the sustainability aspects? We have been talking about training skills that are very transferable. We have had several engagements with the different key players, the training institutions, the Ministry of Education. We know that the sector requires different skills, but we also know that these skills are transferable. So you can acquire these skills as you work in the oil and gas sector. Tomorrow, you will be able to be absorbed in a different sector. So even the skills that we are proposing, the skills that we are advancing, the discussions we are having with the key stakeholders, is that we need to be able to train skills that are easily transferable from the oil and gas sector into the other sectors of the economy. We also have what we call the National Oil and Gas Talent Register. I'm sure most of us have heard of this. It's a very interesting tool that takes stock of the talent that we have in country. Now, this National Oil and Gas Talent Register also facilitates in aspects of sustainability and continuity in a way that employers or companies that also register on this National Oil and Gas Talent Register from different sectors of the economy. It's construction, it is environmental, it is catering, it is all those technical aspects that you can talk about. These people, these companies are able to pick talent from this National Oil and Gas Talent Register. So as you're registering on the NOCTIA, what we call the NOCTIA, which is the National Oil and Gas Talent Register, you have an opportunity to be able to get a job in the oil and gas sector, but you also have an opportunity to be able to be picked for an opportunity in a different sector altogether. And that's the continuity and business sustainability we're talking about. And the continuous trainings we've also had with the IOCs, these will definitely build the capabilities and expertise of Ugandans. We know there are several prospects around the region. We've heard of the prospects in Mozambique. We've heard of the Kenya opportunities of oil and gas. We know that Congo, there are very good prospects. We know Southern Sudan. So as Ugandans, as people gain these skills and experience in the sector, they will definitely be able to take on these opportunities that are beyond our borders and be able to work in different areas. The National Supplier Database, which is a very common system at the PAU, is also something that facilitates continuity and sustainability. We have several companies on this database. We have both foreign companies and we also have local companies. And over time, we've seen opportunities come through joint ventures between the local companies and the foreign companies. And these foreign companies also have lots of opportunities in the different sectors of the economy. So that opportunity to joint venture, to work with the different companies that are globally exposed and have different opportunities also, that gives you an opportunity to widen your net and be able to tap into other opportunities beyond just the oil and gas sector. And that aspect is, of course, the cross-cutting market that I earlier alluded to, that has aspects of transferable skills. We all know that aspects like fabrication, like construction, like environmental studies, all those cut across the different segments of the economy, the different sectors of the economy. So they're really cross-cutting. So as you have an eye on the oil and gas sector, you also need to have an eye on the opportunities in the other sectors as well. Rosette, we can go to the next slide. This is another slide that also talks about sustainability. We are advancing what we call the linkages, the sector linkages at the PAU. It is a very, very impressive concept where we know that oil and gas has a linkage in the different sectors of the economy. We talk about housing, we talk about the health sector, we talk about agriculture, we talk about tourism. So it has those linkages. So whatever happens in this sector eventually feeds into the other sectors. If you look at the infrastructure that we talked about earlier, the airport, the roads, the industrial park that is being set up, those could actually boost tourism. They could provide quick market access for agricultural products. And all that now feed in, all those aspects feed into the tourism, grows the tourism sector, grows the agriculture sector. Those are the synergies we are seeing at the Petroleum Authority that could be harnessed between the oil and gas sector and the other sectors for continuity and sustainability. We have what we call the ADP program, the Agricultural Development Program, that is being implemented in the 4 districts of the Alberta and Graben. That is meant to build farmers' capacity, not only to supply the oil and gas industry, but also to be able to meet the regional market and the international market to build their capacity. Those are the linkages. We've had discussions on export opportunities, because after the peak period, you have this excess capacity. You have people who are able to meet international standards and they want to be able to export their products. So discussions have been ongoing with the Uganda Export Promotion Board to make sure that they come in and provide avenues for export. And these engagements have happened. We've had conferences, we've had discussions with them to be able to have that conversation and be able to drive the agenda for sustainability through exporting of the different products or the different services that the oil and gas sector will have harnessed in the long run. We can go to the next slide, Rosette. Thank you. This is just a conclusion on the aspects that we propose at the PAU. We know that the oil and gas definitely has several linkages, and we want to build on the competencies, we want to build on the opportunities that this sector provides to be able to provide goods and services to the other sectors of the economy. So what the stakeholders need to do is to keep an eye on the other sectors that we've highlighted, the opportunities they are in, and be able to harness, go for them, look out for these opportunities so that we can have a continuous cycle, that we can have that aspect of continuity as business enterprises, even as individuals. Again, we need to continue collaborating with both local and international firms to benefit from the exposure and improved competencies, like I earlier mentioned, because if you gain these competencies, if you're able to meet the oil and gas standards, it means you're able to meet the global standards and you can try your trade in any other market globally or even any other sector. So that is something that we need to take note of as players in the sector, keep an eye on those opportunities in the different sectors of the economy. Again, we need to adopt industry-based practices and governance systems and structures to enhance our business's ability to withstand shocks. Peter highlighted some of those challenges that we meet, or business will definitely meet. So we need to harness, we need to build systems, corporate governance issues, policies in place so that our businesses are able to withstand those shocks, because for sure, those shocks will definitely be there. Like I mentioned, you have this issue of COVID. It's probably going to be another pandemic sometime to come. It's going to be a price slump that is going to affect the sector. So these shocks are very, very expected. We need to prepare for them and build our competencies and systems to withstand their effects. Last but not least, of course, at the authority, would like to thank the organizers of this engagement, that's Total and Talo, together with their key partners. We know that the Uganda Chamber of Mines has also been key in this engagement. They've been able to organize this particular webinar. I know we have different challenges like COVID and all that, but through innovative ways, we've been able to have this and many more, I'm sure, are coming. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to end there and thank you for listening to me. And we are around to have a conversation in a Q&A. We'll be able to have this conversation throughout this engagement. Cynthia, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very, very much, Mr. Byamukama, for those very insightful remarks and sharing with us the overview of the oil and gas sector. I was really, really mostly impressed by the number of jobs and the benefits that the entire sector will get out of this, and the comprehensive report and what POW is doing in this area. So thank you very, very much for those remarks. And without further ado, I would like to get into the next part of the agenda, which is to introduce to you the different speakers that are going to address us. So right before your very eyes, you have the distinguished gentleman who I'm pleased to be sitting beside, Mr. Charles Ochichi, who is an entrepreneur that needs very little introduction. Mr. Ochichi has over 20 years, experience. He is an international speaker. I'm sure Rosette is going to put back the slide that introduces him. But just to share, he has over 20 years of experience. He's an international speaker who's been featured on CNN, BBC Africa, and of course, he's always gracing our screens here in our local communities on different media houses, speaking about entrepreneurship, only practice, very passionate about training and really sharing his vast experience and knowledge with us. He's of course the executive director of Enterprise Uganda, which is a very also famous institution in Uganda. He's an award winner under the British Most Influential Alumni. So, I mean, of course, we don't expect anything less than that. And in 2009, he was declared one of 6 Ugandans, Uganda's national heroes by New Vision readers. So I'm sure most of you on this call already know him in one way or the other. If he's not trained you, you've probably met him in one or the other. He holds an MBA and MCS in investment analysis from Stirling University in the UK. And I'm so pleased to sit beside him today as he's going to address you on a topic that is about business continuity during and after the pandemic situations. Next, the panelist that we have besides him is Mr. Daniel Kakuru. Daniel Kakuru is known to me. He's my OB, but that is a story for another day. But he's an operations supervisor. Please, Rosette, put on Daniel's biography, because I am going to paraphrase and not read everything as it is stated on the screen. But just to go on, Daniel has 9 years experience as working in Talo, Uganda, who are one of the organizers of this webinar. And he's an operational strategist working on projects like the Tilenga project. And it's one of Uganda's flagship oil and gas development projects. He's an accredited facilities manager. He's an engineer, he's a techie, and an experiential learner. And Daniel, in his own words, says he loves traveling, slaying mountains, seeking new adventures, and culinary experiences. So we cannot wait to hear from Daniel. Again, Daniel is the operations supervisor of Talo Uganda operations. Vast experience, 9 years, and we will be hearing more from him later on his topic. The next panelist that we will have is called Andrew Ekwang. So if Rosette could change the screen, because I spoke through Daniel before that came on. Rosette, please change to Daniel's biography. So Daniel, Andrew Ekwang is currently the Integrity Compliance Manager at Total E&P, Uganda. He's tasked mainly with the responsibility of implementing within Total E&P the compliance program of Total Group in accordance with the existing laws. This includes the prevention of corruption, anti-competitive practices, and fraud. So Daniel is an expert in his area, and I'm sure when his turn comes to speak, he will tell us more about compliance and what we need to do and how we can navigate the policies, the rules, the regulations, and whether they are still relevant. But that is it for you, and that is the amazing Andrew who we'll be hearing from. Lastly, on the panelists, we'll have a lady, gender sensitivity and gender balance. So the lady is Caroline Chirabo. So to tell you about Caroline, she's a highly experienced investment professional and a gender equality champion. She has led the work of notable impact funds such as Yunus Social Business, Mango Fund, and most recently, Mercy Corps Ventures, where she has been instrumental in shaping strategies for the impact investment sector. Caroline sits on the boards of United Social Ventures and Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs East Africa Chapter. She is also a member of the Boardroom Africa Women in Investment. Lastly, Caroline is a member of the Africa List, which is a select community of next generation CEOs in Africa's most exciting growth markets. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the different speakers that we will have today addressing us. And the key speaker is, of course, Mr. Charles Ochichi, and who will address us right now. And next, then we'll have the panel discussions. Mr. Ochichi is going to speak to us for 20 minutes, and we'll talk about the topic of business continuity during and after the pandemic situations. So Mr. Ochichi, as he's across from me in the room, but Mr. Ochichi, in your vast experience as a celebrated entrepreneur, trainer, strategist, we are very, very excited to have you on this webinar. You're most welcome. And please, over to you. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, and thank you so much, Peter, Rosette, and Alex, for all the previous submissions. It is a very interesting.
Good. Am I?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are now.
Cynthia, thank you so much. And I also want to.
Can you switch on your camera? Your camera. Yes, because you're the one speaking. It's not.
The camera should be on. Is it on now? It's on. Yeah. All right, and I hope I can move on now. I first want to thank the organizers of this webinar, and thanks so much Total, Talo, and Uganda Chamber of Mines. I'm grateful for the picture that has already been given to us by the earlier speakers. And what I read is that the oil and gas sector is here and it's coming big and great, and the opportunities are big within the sector itself, but it has even something much better, which is the catalytic effects that's going to create for the empowerment and the growth of the Ugandan economy. And this has been properly illustrated on the way it will affect the health sector, tourism, construction, agriculture, transport, and all the other main sectors of our own economy. I'm particularly interested because when we talk about COVID, we only see the negative part of COVID. And indeed, there are negative aspects of COVID. But when you look at the way COVID has come in, it has also brought in something which is quite interesting, that nobody can claim to be big all the time and be invisible to the challenges all the time. Whoever expected a company with chain like Forever 21 to roll up and close up? How about Airbus releasing so many employees? HSBC removing almost 30,000 employees. That's a leading bank in globally. British Airways releasing 20,000 trained staff. Virgin Group closing their Australian outlet. This is just to tell you that, yes, indeed, the pandemic has brought aspects that are saying nobody is too big to be challenged or even to be extinguished. But that notwithstanding, I also want to see the positive part of this pandemic. And that's why I want Rosette, give me the next slide. Oh, can I just do it myself? Okay. All right, so I want to see something interesting about this pandemic. And I'm seeing it from the people who have been put in the National Supplier Data Bank or database to be suppliers in the oil and gas sector. My message to you all is that treat this pandemic as an opportunity for you to build your muscles, to build your competencies, to build your character, to fit into a highly demanding and extremely exacting high standards sector, which is the oil and gas sector. This sector is world class, and anybody associating with this sector as a supplier or part of the value chain anywhere within the sector, there are a few things you just have to embrace. And this is the time you need to start embracing these things even before you enter and become a supplier in the oil and gas sector. I'm talking about being able to deliver solutions that are consistent in terms of quality, deadlines, and quantities. We are all aware that in our Ugandan context, you will find somebody delivering mangoes, and mangoes have all types of sizes in terms of ripeness, quality, age, and all those kind of things. We are talking of a sector that will be saying, we have mangoes that we want and they have to be of a certain consistency. We need to receive this by particular time so that by breakfast time, they're all there. The quantities must reflect exactly what we want so that when you are serving breakfast, you do not start saying, oh no, mangoes are finished, can you take pineapples? These are some of the things we must begin to embrace right now, using the challenges that the pandemic has brought onto us. You have to be lean and mean. In other words, no wastage, no taking anything for granted, and you have to be generating repeat business as part of your everyday way of doing business. In other words, anytime you discover that you've lost a client and the client has gone to give business to somebody else, you should be losing sleep. If you are not going to be losing sleep and you are intending to be in the oil and gas sector, you're in a wrong vision or a wrong outlook. Your funding sources should be as attractive as possible and should be as easily available because of the way you are. In other words, this is the time for you to be attractive to as many funding sources as you can probably be. Because when it comes to entering the value chains associated with the oil and gas sector, we are not going to accept your high costs, your high expenses, just because nobody wanted to give you suitable, affordable finance. In other words, we should be grateful for the pandemic, for giving us more room to acquire these kind of things. Treat it as your gym, as your laboratory, to begin to embrace these things so that when you begin to put pen to paper, as you sign up some of those contracts, some of those deals, some of those retainers, as a restaurant, as a transporter, as a supplier of agro products, you should be saying, I'm fit and good for the job. It comes also in time because the final investment decision is not yet made, but time is running out because I'm quite confident, and a message has been going around and I've been hearing from Alex here, we may be not very far off from the signing of FID. And when that comes, it should get us when we are set and ready to move. Let's move. Rosette. Next slide, please. Okay, all right. So I just highlighted the aspects of being in an international world-class sector with exacting standards. But I want now to paint a clear picture about being in private sector in general. And I want the people who are in the oil and sectors, oil and gas sector to appreciate that this picture is a must for you to fit and remain in this sector. For you to enter the private sector and succeed and be there are two rules that you must fulfill. Rule number one simply says, you need to get in and get in with a functional solution, a solution that meets the expectations of the buyer. If you cannot fulfill that bare minimum, there is no sympathy in the private sector, which says, oh no, we are receiving solutions from the ethnic communities in the neighborhood of the refinery. Let's buy their sick chicken. Let's buy their bad eggs. Nobody will be interested. They would rather bring eggs from as far as Kisoro, as far as Nairobi, as far as even South Africa. There is no running away from meeting the minimum expectations of the buyer. And these people that we're talking about here, we're talking about world-class people, people who know what it means to come to Africa and get fresh fruits, who know how to come to Africa and get good milk. So the issues of trying to talk about your ethnic group, about your background, about how you are neighboring the sources of oil, all those do not matter. Buyers are selfish. They are buying for their own good. But they're also fair. They know that whatever they are buying, it should be reflecting value for money. So that's rule number one that the private sector demands from anybody who claims to have a space in that game. But for you to remain in that game long term, you must also recognize that there's a second rule. And the second rule comes in whether you want it or not. It says, the solution you have been selling, that customers have been buying repeatedly from you, are you every day sharpening it, improving it, to make sure that any other person trying to come into that space will find it difficult to take away your customer? In other words, the competition is not going to be amongst equals. You will have to be ready to compete with the most resourced, most funded, people with the best connections, best technology, and the most trained employees. This is the nature of the private sector. And nobody will protect you, and there will be no law to say, oh, sorry, this part here, please let the locals be the suppliers of eggs. If you've been irregular, if your quality has been also inconsistent, somebody else will respond to the demands and the calls of the customer and will fill that space without anybody apologizing for somebody who has been removed from the opportunity. This entry rule and this sustainability rule that I've just shared are very tough even during ordinary times. They become even much more relevant and pertinent during the COVID times or during the days when you get yourself involved in the oil and gas sector. What do I mean by this? Let's look at what I mean by this in the next slide. I'm saying that because of COVID, things are changing about the expectations of your customer. That's rule number one. Things are changing about the competition of the person you are going to play with in the same sector. That's rule number two. Let's go back to the kind of picture that the pandemic has brought on board to the person who used to buy from you. That person may be still the same person you know by face, but his tastes have changed. The lifestyle may have changed. The incomes have dropped. He now has alternative solutions he wants to buy. Are you aware of this? It's not just saying, I know Rosette and I know what she wants. She wants this kind of shoes. She has begun to learn that maybe she needs to have only 3 black shoes, sets of black shoes, and those could be enough for the entire year. And it's now up to you to now say, okay, Rosette, how can I supply the 3? And why have you chosen to reduce from 6 to 3? So do not make an assumption that you know the customer. The appearance is the same, the inner person, the convictions, the tastes, the lifestyle have since moved on because of the impact of the pandemic. The priorities also may have changed, and these priorities may have been dictated by loss of a job, drop in income, and maybe somebody is now saying, I used to waste my time, my money by going for some of these leisure activities. I'm not going to continue with this anymore. I used to imagine that I could take forever to finish my accommodation. I'm going to accelerate getting my accommodation, and I'm not going to be renting anymore. Priorities have changed. Are you aware that the same customer that you used to have now may not want to take bread the way they used to buy? But if you went and talked to them and discovered that, you know what, you are now not buying bread because the sizes I have, the smallest is half a kilo. If you talk to this customer, you would have maybe discovered that if you reduce the smallest bread available now, is no longer 500 grams, but maybe 200 grams, you could still get back this customer. So that's the first part. We need to appreciate that with this pandemic, the customer we thought we knew has moved on, and it's time to put on their shoes once more so that we know them better. But on the other hand, something else is going to be happening right now and also during the days that come after the COVID. You could be having the competition of same people that you used to know, but these people now have hardened off. They have learned that where they used to work with 50 workers, now they can work with 20. They have improved the systems. They have empowered their employees. They have adjusted their attitudes. This kind of a person that you used to take for granted is now more ferocious and can uproot you without your knowledge. Revisit the nature of the competition, because this thing has taught us many things on how to fit and be mean and extremely vigilant. It could also be that because now some competitors elsewhere in other jurisdictions have managed to survive better during the COVID, they now know that they can take over their domestic economies and quickly look at abroad and come to your own territory and come and take over your own customers. So you may receive stronger new entrants, something you never expected. You thought you just needed to recover, but as you're trying to recover, a more muscular, a more powerful competitor has come into your neighborhood. And in some instances, because of now the technology and because of what COVID has opened us to know, somebody will be supplying your home market without having physical presence right at your home. Are we ready for this? Let's move to the next slide. Now, because of this, I thought I needed to quickly share with all of us what I call the mindset we need to embrace in these kind of situations, and use this mindset to get ready to join the oil and gas sector, and later use it to acquire what I call enduring transferable skills we can use to transform our own economy called Uganda. So the first part of my submission is invest in yourself. Learn from existing and new clients. Yes, and each time you get a customer coming to buy from you, do not take them for granted. Find out whether there's anything else you can do to improve the solution they are trying to buy from you. Avoid luxury for yourself. Something you can do without for the time being as you build up competencies and capabilities to serve the customer better. Please transfer the benefits to the customer. The customer is trying to recover. The customer has suffered as a result of the pandemic. Do not try to get yourself more excited with the benefits for your enjoyment. Maximize every resource, and I'm talking of physical resources like premises, machinery, as well as human resources, time, and information, and especially information. Whatever information you get, this is the time not to take anything for granted. Every day, be updating yourself in terms of customer needs, in terms of suppliers' needs, in terms of what the competition is thinking about, so that you are in position to respond and be of value and more well-positioned to look after your customer. The client should never pay for your inefficiencies and for your excess baggage. And then obviously, as you invest in yourself, do not just look at the ordinary way of doing things, innovate so that you can be able to deliver solutions cheaply but efficiently. Look at online solutions. Look at working from home. Look at getting your employees to take over more roles than they used to take before. Because we have already seen that many of our employees could actually take on more assignments than we used to think, because we used to call somebody an internal auditor. But maybe an internal auditor also could be able to train people in other systems and continue to be an internal auditor. Let's continue. The other, after investing in yourself, you also now need to invest in the networks, the suppliers. These are people who are supplying your competition. Please get close to them and learn from them what they know about the competition. Experts, there are people who are experts in your area of domain. Get close to them, pay for them to be part of your own solutions. And as you do that, continue also to talk to your own peers, because in there is a lot of information and learning that you need for you to become fit and proper for your own area. Bankers as part of your networks. If you currently have loans, ask yourself, will I pay for this loan? If the loan is beginning to eat you up, do not wait until the bank writes the last calling letter. Get yourself first thing tomorrow morning to the bank and talk to your bankers and give them the reality and tell them, I've never stolen a shilling, but these are my cash flows. They don't seem to be in accordance with what we had agreed in the loan agreement. Can we revisit them right now? If you read today's papers, those of you who are Ugandans, there's already a message which is saying the amount of loans that are going to go bad are numerous. And I bring this point because during the pandemic times, you should be concentrating on more effective strategies on how to serve your customer better, on how to compete better. But instead, when you have got a banker all the time reminding you about the loan, warning you that we are coming to sell your property, your brain is completely numbed and you are not thinking in a manner that creates an entrepreneur ready to compete during these tough times. And should you want to take a loan at this particular time, ask yourself a clear question. Will I be able to pay? Do not say, we shall see what will happen. Let's just sign for the loan. Those are not the kind of statements you should be having during this kind of times. Human resources, ensure that you get your staff to begin to become self-driven. They must begin to take over their own territories, and you need to harness them so that they can be able to give you many more ideas that they are seeing on the ground, which you, the owner of the business, may not be seeing the way they are seeing. And finally here, I want to also say that please do not try to invest so much in public solutions. There have been so many things announced by government, by whoever, by some donors. Many of these take a long time to materialize. As you listen and hope for them to come through, look inside yourself for solutions that you can effect in the meantime. Let's go to the closing slide. In effect, this is what I want to share for anybody in the supply chain associated with the oil and gas sector, and indeed any other person in the private sector during these times. I've called it post-COVID energized mindset. The first thing for such a mindset is independence. You take 100% responsibility for everything happening in your territory. Your loss of customers, the competition that is surrounding you up, it is your responsibility. Do not, as you pray, wake up and connect and tell yourself, what is it I can do as you open that door? Number two, self-belief. Clearly telling yourself that you are good enough for this battle. There's no saying, I wish I was like so-and-so. The way you are ready for this battle. Wake up completely knowing that you are ready for this game and you are going to play the game to your very best. That's how Leicester managed to come from a team that was supposed to have been relegated in 2015, 2016, and it ended up taking the Premier League championship. So self-belief can change any story anytime. Number 3 is persistence. It will not be easy right now. It will not be easy when COVID is done away with, when we have gotten the vaccination. There will be harder knocks coming from more competent competitors, coming from more competent, more demanding customers. Please be ready for this, knowing fully you are fit for it. But count on number 4, which is learning. Learn from the competition. Learn from your joint venture partners, because some of us are going to have joint venture partners. Those are not just coming in because of money. They are coming in because of money, but probably also technology, expertise, things you never knew. Learn from your staff, from the experts, from the suppliers, from the customers. But number 4, have the courage to face it alone and face it your way. Because these are days when you cannot start saying, this is the rule book to read, to walk it. Just wake up and get going. The reasons to give up are many. And many people would understand if you did surrender. But let me say this, you will discover that there were many people who were having exactly the same fears, big names, but they woke up knowing that, what can I do? But somehow they put on a brave face and they walked into the battle and they discovered that they could play and knock the ball to the opponent's territory. And then finally, when I come again back to innovation, there are things that I want you to borrow from other sectors just to get yourself to appreciate that these things can be done. For example, when you look at the aviation industry, one of the things they are good at is timekeeping. No matter whether a plane is leaving from Africa, from Australia, from whichever part of the world, it must leave on time. So there's nothing like saying this is Africa. It can be done. So there are things that you must begin to embrace, and embrace because these things have been done elsewhere. Introduce them into your practice. The banking sector is known for making sure that before each day closes, every aspect of the transactions of the day have been duly recorded and balanced. No shilling is left hanging unaccounted for. Those are the kind of things we need to borrow from, because the people who are doing this in the banking sector are ordinary Ugandans. These are normal people that are in our homes, and we can do this in our own businesses. Record keeping, balancing your money every day, knowing where each shilling has gone, it is something we can embrace and accommodate. The hotel sector is known for hygiene. It is known for courtesy, and they do it routinely. It is part of their DNA. If it can be done in a hotel sector, introduce this in your own game. I want to leave my remarks there and simply say that the pandemic we have had here could be an opportunity for us to prepare, one, our mindsets for a very interesting sector, which is bringing skills that are transferable, but those skills, we could easily miss them if we start thinking that they are punishing us. Take it positively, and when you acquire those skills, Uganda is yours for taking. So take the opportunity, capture some of these kind of things, and let's get ready for the oil and gas sector, and let's get ready to take on our country and take it to transformation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ochichi, for those wonderful remarks. Thank you very, very much. We have learned a lot from what you said. What has stood out for me is when you said compete with the most resourced. Competition is not among equals. I think that was a very powerful statement, because everybody needs to be ready to punch above their weight in these unusual times. So, and then, I mean, the other thing that really stood out for me is, of course, the fact that you mentioned all these critical things that should help business people stay buoyant, afloat, and remain relevant, like, you know, remaining energized. That's drawing on your strength, self-belief, courage, continuously learning, and, you know, being persistent, and all these different things that you said, which are all very critical to business continuity. So thank you very, very much once again for those amazing and wonderful remarks. And without further ado, Next, we are going to hear from Mr. Daniel Kakuru. Daniel, once again, as I earlier introduced, is the operations supervisor, Talo Uganda operations. And Daniel will be talking to us about, operations. And the question I really have for Daniel is, how critical is operational efficiency to the success of a business that's operating in an unstable macro environment? Daniel, I know you are going to talk to us about, operational efficiency. That's your area, 9 years experience. So talk to us about that. How critical is it really?
Good morning, everyone.
Daniel, you have 5 minutes.
I'll be as efficient as I can be. Thank you, Cynthia.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I first and foremost will thank the organizers of this webinar, Total and the Chamber of Mines, and on our side, Peter and the supply chain team and the rest of us here at Talo. Just a brief, Talo's been here for too long, since 2004, I think longer than most of the other JV partners we have here. And fast forward 2020, it's now a public secret that we'll be exiting. However, I'll be happy to share some of the lessons that I have learned from my time here in Talo, and specifically operations and how operations and business continuity sort of relate, okay? And I want to use specifically a few, I'm going to call them tools or drivers that I think in the mindset of operations, these drivers are key to the achieving of our business continuity plan. So you will do different plans for different organizations, and what are the key drivers for these plans? So in the operations world, that's the perspective I will be providing. And if we can just get right into the next slide. Okay, so 3 of them for me, okay? And I'm going to talk about people, the supply chain, which has been mentioned by Mr. Ochichi and the previous speakers. And then the last one will be processes. So people, supply chain, and processes as tools for driving business continuity in the operations side of things. And when we talk about people and relating it to the SMEs, okay, we know SMEs and most of the organizations have limited resources, and therefore they'll always have either a smaller number of people, okay? But in the sense of business continuity, I think it's important that we should hire very highly skilled people. And I talk about dedication because we are hiring people for now, but we're also hiring people that are going to ensure the success in the future. And the future is very uncertain. And if COVID is anything to go by, things change. Now, COVID is a typical example, but the oil and gas business is one that is very, very uncertain. And you've heard the statement, high risk, high gain, and that's very clear in the oil and gas business. The projects have an evolution. You start, with the exploration, and you move to the next phase. You appraise, you get into production. But with each of these phases, you get different shocks within the processes. We've seen that people and the jobs, you'll have a peak at some point, then you'll have a slump and a plateau. So with all those jobs being created, the Petroleum Authority is telling you, please prepare for a slump and a plateau, which means definitely that people will come and they will go, okay? And for different reasons, the price fluctuations, for COVID, for political, reasons, wars and the like, and all that affects the business. So I'd like people to think, and the organizations to think, that the oil and gas business is a transitional, it's an evolving business, okay? So you need to hire people that will be able to provide you the skill sets that you need today. You need to hire people, and keeping in mind that organizations must survive the different changes and they must transition from exploration to the next phase of appraisal to production. And a lot of the times, some of the requirements do change, okay? So you need to have people who are multi-skilled, okay? Who will be adaptable to the different changes and whose competency you can rely on and ties directly into with the competencies of the organizations, that what the organization is looking for to achieve at whatever level of evolution of the life cycle of the project. People, again, if we do not hire the right people, if we do not train them, and Mr. Chichi mentioned that this is a very, very demanding industry. The skills and the competencies and the requirements of the industry are, at the top end of the tier. So the people that you have must be able to represent and be able to deliver at the different levels. I'll give you an example. Tallow, since 2015, we've gone through several changes globally. Unfortunately, it's resulted in laying off of several staff. However, we have remained the operators for the license area 2 since those changes started to take place. We had a staff of 200, 300 people, but today, if you look at the sheer number of people that we have, okay, and our obligations as an operator to continue to deliver with less than half or even 3/4 of the number that we had, comes back to the people that have been working with this industry. You have a huge area of 1,300 square meters that has to be covered in 2 districts. You have 2 camps, 30 well sites. All these facilities must be maintained. You have compliance requirements that you must very regularly submit and give to the authorities. So if you don't have a good backbone and who is your people, then as an SME, you will struggle, okay? Moving on to the next tool for me is supply chain. To have a robust and dependable set of suppliers and contractors. And what I mean here really is that your supply chain must understand what the key dependencies of your main client are, okay? They must take the measures which are appropriate and feasible, and safeguard how they deliver on those key dependencies. Your contractors and suppliers must also understand what their key deliverables really are, okay? And in this, as an SME, but as a client, like who we are, we need to understand the capacity of our supply chain, of our suppliers and our contractors. A very quick example I can give due to COVID today. We had to withdraw all our field staff and they had to work remotely. We could only at this point rely on the capacity that our contractors in Bulisa and Kaisotonia can give to us. So we have a security contractor, we have a maintenance contractor. Are they able to continue to deliver even with the challenges being posed by COVID today? Are they still able to source for spare parts? Are they still able to source for the requirements for their staff, food, PPE, and the like? So if you do not understand their capacity, if you do not build redundancy in how you, in their supply chains and in your supply chains, then the hits that you will have at the different stages will definitely, you feel them and there's a risk of you collapsing and failing to deliver, okay? You have different business continuity plans, which we've talked about, but are your suppliers and contractors part of that? Do they understand your business continuity plan? Do they know what their part is in making sure this business continuity plan is effective and can actually be achieved? I encourage that you do a lot of drills and scenario planning around this, okay? COVID has been one of those that we had never envisaged. We have thought about fire, we've thought about oil spills, we've thought about accidents and war. COVID was one of those we didn't take into consideration when we're doing our scenario plannings. Now it's an eye opener And I'm sure business and operations will never be the same because some of these things become and we're going to remain a big part of it. The last bit would be for me on processes. And here we are talking about sustainable processes that are ingrained. And what I mean here is when no one is watching, when people are forced to work remotely, can your processes stand, okay? Do you continue to have the performance, the effective responses, the recovery plans that you have? Can all that stand even when no one is watching? Are your processes simple? Are they relevant? Do they create value? So the more we can simplify the processes that we have, okay? And I'll give you a very quick example. For most of those people who have worked with oil and gas, you will know that we are big on health, safety, and the environment, okay? And the social aspect, which is the communities that we work with, okay? And because of that, our processes have a bit of HSC at every different step. Have you risk planned? Have you done job plans for this? Have you, spoken to the right or had the right community engagements? Are you being environmentally cautious with what you're doing? Okay. So right now, today, without field staff, do we still have permits to work being done? Do we still have the different small processes on HSC being done? Are the contractors still wearing the right gear? Okay. In the beginning, people didn't want to use safety boots and gloves and the like. But today I can tell you the contractors in the field will continue to wear gloves and their helmets and have the right gear, even when no one is watching. So it's simplified processes, but most importantly, ingrained in the day-to-day working of the operations of the company. This will help you in the long term that even when you take a shock such as COVID or any other, you continue to have the accountability that you're looking for, the sustainability, that the processes continue to be auditable, okay? And if I can say, remotely accessible and practical in the sense that I don't have to be in Bulisa for me to understand and know that the people who are down there are doing the things as we have agreed, the processes, the SOPs, it's become a very key word these days. SOPs, are they being followed even when no one is watching? So for me, and in regards to business continuity on an operations perspective, people, supply chain, and processes are key drivers, okay? And the more we invest in them, the more we have adaptable people, adaptable processes, I think the better chance we have for any uncertainty, COVID or any other that could come to the business's way, okay? That's my quick presentation within the 5 minutes of being allotted, and thank you very much. Back to you, Cynthia.
Thank you very much, Daniel Kakuru, again, Operations Supervisor, Talo, Uganda. Daniel, we won't forget, of course, the 3 key things that you've mentioned, which is people, supply chain, processes. Very critical. I think for me, what came to my mind when you were addressing us was the fact that in Talo, Uganda, you always have to abide by, certain standards of operation. And suddenly all of us, because of COVID pandemic, have been shoved into that sort of discipline of having to wear masks and having to, sanitize and all these things. So we could pick a leaf from people who operate in the oil and gas sector. I believe we're picking up that discipline and ensuring that we are safe all the time. So thank you once again, Daniel, for those insightful comments. Next, among the speakers, before I move on to the next speaker, I want to remind all the participants that in case you have a question, please remember to type it in the chat section. And also, feel free to please do post on social media. We have a hashtag, which is called Total Supplier Development or Total Supplier Forum. So feel free to go online, share the lessons you are taking or picking up from these discussions, and let the general public plug into that. So Next on the lineup, we have Edward Ekwang, and I would like to remind you that Edward is the Integrity Compliance. Andrew Ekwang, sorry again, I shudder to even imagine what would happen if you mix up people's names in another scenario. But anyways, this is Andrew Ekwang, who is the Integrity Compliance Manager for Total E&P, and he's the gentleman that has oversight in prevention of corruption, fraud, and anti-competitive practices. So Andrew is a very distinguished person who, of course, implements Total E&P's compliance programs. So for me, really, Andrew is going to talk about, of course, his area of expertise. But the question I really have in my mind at this point, Andrew, as you come on, you know, regulations, rules, procedures, all these things that we have been guiding the way we operate, businesses operate, are they still relevant for the new normal we find ourselves in today? Shouldn't the implementers and policymakers be going back on the drawing board to urgently amend or to align the different, you know, procedures, policies, and so on, to make sure that they remain relevant and not a hindrance to the business growth? So, Andrew, over to you. Most welcome, Andrew. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cynthia, and welcome everyone.
Cynthia.
Yes, Cynthia. Welcome everyone. I hope I'm audible. Now, compliance is going to be our main topic today. I think it is pertinent that almost all businesses get to understand that as you go on and do business, you will always come across, you know, things like corruption, fraud, unfair competition, human rights, environmental damage, conflict of interest. Now, some of these things, as small and medium scale businesses, people tend to underlook them, but they are very important. And you might think it is a thing for big companies, but you see, the big companies work with medium scale companies. And sometimes the risk doesn't originate from the big company. It might originate from the smaller companies. And so they also expect that as they try to observe some of these regulations, as they try to observe some of these, you know, policies and guidelines, even their partners are observing the same. I think let us go into the presentation now. Yes, so we are going to be fast, trying to look at, you know, what is the global perception, what is corruption, so that we can measure around there, and to see the strong enforcement environment we are in right now. We'll look very fast at Total's program. Yes, before we can conclude. I think we proceed. Yes, I think many of us have seen this. You've heard of Transparency International. They give every year a kind of a perception of what the world thinks about the others. As you can see from this, you might not see it clearly right now, but you can go and Google and check. You'll find in our own scoring as Uganda, we are scoring around 20-something%, around 28%. That is what the world thinks about us. And they have ranked us at around 137 position. Actually, the fourth also in East Africa. So that is how the world thinks about Uganda. You might think it is not relevant to us, or to you, but if you're looking forward to joint ventures with big companies, as Alex had already noted, that in the next 4 years, we are looking at something like $20 billion of investment in this country. Now that is big money. And big money, there are people who are following up the big money. They are watching how it is being distributed, how it is, the contracts pertaining them are being given out, things like that. And for sure, for that money to be invested here in Uganda, we should expect that many other guys are going to come from out, and you can already see the kind of perception that the world out there has about Uganda. I think let's move. Yeah. So we just wanted to highlight something very fast on what corruption is. You know, many times you might think, when you think of corruption, you think about government. But you see, as long as you can promise or give anything to someone in government or even to someone in the private sector, and you can do it yourself or you might do it through someone else, with the mindset that maybe when I give that person this something, he's going to give me some improper advantage, some advantage, already you're engaged in corruption. Sometimes you do it actively, sometimes we actually don't know that we're doing it. Sometimes we passively do it. You know, you see someone practicing it and you decide to keep quiet. But you see, at the end of the day, you're already involved in it. Why are people so concerned, or Total is so concerned about the aspect of public official? Is the fact that, one, there is a lot of damage that is caused by public corruption. And there is a lot of perception drawn to you, a private company, if you are known to have been engaged in corruption that involves public officials. Why? Because people look at it that you have participated in making our lives hard, in making our lives complicated, and they will retaliate. So as a business, you need to protect yourself from such kind of mindset. Why? Because it might actually bring down your business and put you in a position where you can't get customers, or you want to move into export business, but then someone tries to do a due diligence and that company already has a bad reputation at their own home. So what exactly are they coming to look for here? Such kind of things. So we need to keep watch as a business to see that you're working out in such a way that what is perceived of you out there can match what you have written in your profile, or can match what you have written in your marketing message. I think let's proceed. Yeah, and the stakes are now so high with the coming of internet, you know, with the things like YouTube, things like Twitter, things, Facebook, you can't hide anymore. Someone will see something, they will post it. Someone will, I think we have, at one point in time, we watched a video in a live TV news of someone being taken, I mean, a public official, a video captured of them taking a bribe. So things like that, you might think you're doing it in the hiding, but you can't hide anymore with the coming up of technologies. And countries are starting to put very strong laws, and also law enforcement agencies. You know, you have people like the US Foreign Corruption Practice Act that is being managed by the Department of Justice of US. You know, many times we look at it and you're like, okay, this is US. It's very far away from Uganda, but it is not far. Why? Because actually that law gives them jurisdiction to anyone who is using a dollar. Now, you know that already our 20 billion we're talking about is US dollars, meaning that it will come from somewhere, maybe some foreign investments. It will come most probably in US dollars. That already puts you in a place where they will want to come and enforce that law, even here in Uganda. Then you have very strong NGO presence nowadays against corruption, you know, activities, activists, you know, people who are trying to push to ensure that business is clean, and also backlash from the public. And as a business, you need to guard yourself against all these so that you can be sustainable, so that you can plan for a longer term. You don't want to be surprised that tomorrow that there is this case against you in court, and much as you are thinking of pushing, now you're going to improve your business now, you now need to start fighting your way out of the case on how you have to come out clean. Let's proceed. Yeah, so there are lots and lots of penalties in regards to getting it wrong. And those penalties range from everywhere, right from, you know, government officials, you know, employees, business executives. There are even scenarios where presidents have gone to jail, like in Brazil. There are even scenarios where business executives have been in jail because of corruption, because the watchdogs are keeping watch of the money, whichever place the money is moving. So they already also have an idea that in the next 4 years, some 20 billion US dollars is going to be invested in Uganda, and they're keeping a watch. And also there are fines, you know, businesses suffer lots and lots of fines. If you look, many corporations have paid fines, many corporations have had reputational damages because of things like that. So you don't want to put your business on the line when in actual sense, you are trying your best to ensure that you keep your business sustainable for the long run. Rosette, you can. So I wanted to share with you something Total does. It's something we are proud of, something we want to share with each and everyone, you know, all our partners. First of all, we expect that you're going to comply with it. Why? Because you have to set a system that safeguards you and also safeguards your partners and safeguards the employees you're bringing on board. In that way, then people feel secure enough to be much more creative, to push, to ensure that the business is sustainable. And it starts from the top, you know, the top has to come up with, like Total has values, you know, and of those 5 values, one of them is respect. And under respect, there is the anti-corruption, you know, anti-corruption, anti-fraud, and antitrust policies. And these policies are right from the top. You know, you have a human rights guide, you have a code of conduct expected of anyone you see. Then you know that, okay, this one either represents Total or is working for Total, that you know that this is the code in which they are going to work. You have to look for a way of defining your company in such a way that when people look at this company, they know this is how we expect them to act. Then you translate that into now policies and guidelines, you know, things that can be implemented, things that can be followed. And then later on, you put them into tools, you know, tools, you know that this helps me do this helps me to do this helps me to do this. I think we are going to look very fast into 2 of them, which are very pertinent to us. One of them is due diligence, and the other one is to have an alert system. And always try to encourage people within the company, you know, to speak up, because, you know, the thing is, what you hide might not hide for a very long time. And you want it to come out early enough to ensure that it can be prevented next time, or it can be mitigated. Yes, Rosette. Okay. Due diligence is our cornerstone. It is something which is so pertinent. I know many of you who have worked with Total have come across this, and you know that it is an area where Total will try to collect as much information as possible. And many times people keep asking, are you guys not asking us for too much? It is not too much. We just want to know who is the partner we are going to work with. And as many people come up, as you plan to enter into joint ventures with many people who are coming, like we saw in the first slide, the perception people already has about Uganda is that they will ask these questions. So you need to be in position to present yourself in such a way that someone knows the partner I'm getting in Uganda is stable enough to ensure sustainability and also not to put my business at risk. Such kind of questions, you cannot run away from it. I think we can move to the next. Yes, and I also talked about alert systems. You know, you have to put in place systems that allow either people within the company and also people outside the company to raise a concern, because that is the only way you're going to know how you're being perceived out there. And then you have to ensure that these concerns, when they are raised, they can be managed. Now, as I was asked at the beginning, are these things still relevant? I think we have seen already, even in the COVID scenario, if you type in Google just 2 words, COVID-19 and corruption, you will see that they are already in so many countries, in South Africa, in the US, even here in Uganda, people who are already in jail because of COVID money. So we cannot say that because of a pandemic or because of the change in the business landscape, there has to be some form of compromise on some of these policies. They are not going to change. And also the guys who are putting in the money are going to become actually much more stringent right now because the money is coming from a hard source. Some tough banks in Europe, some tough banks in Uganda and things like that. The money is coming from a tough source. And for that reason, they will be much more vigilant. Why? Because they expect value and expect not to lose that investment. So you have to set in place in your company systems that allow for such kind of transparency. Yes, I think we can move next. Yes, and as Total, we are really counting on you guys, all our contractors. We count on it because we know that most of the times you are out there and you represent Total sometimes much more visibly than actually Total employees or Total itself. So in that way, we expect you also to be in position to, to comply, have this compliance framework drafted in your company. And if you need support, Total is always in position to provide support where necessary, or provide guidance where necessary, or provide you with some form of a framework of what is done within Total that you can also use to work out your way into becoming a much more compliant business. Yes, I think basically that is it. Thank you very much for listening. I hand back to Cynthia now.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for those insights. Thank you very much for sharing with us and also confirming and reminding us and assuring us that Total is willing to support its suppliers anytime and share the framework. I think that is very important, especially for smaller SMEs and businesses that are not as structured. I think that reassurance is very comforting. I think for me, what really stood out for me is the importance and reminder that corruption is really an evil, and how the different businesses can navigate it by having, for instance, due diligence, or having their employees, speaking up and putting up their hands and supporting them on that journey. It reminds me of this Ghanaian journalist who is called Enas Aremeyao, who does underground, in intelligence, and he just has like a necklace which would be able to, he would use to record people when he's giving them bribes, and he's managed to bring down so many government officials and so many businesses and lawyers and very powerful people as a result. So it is true that corruption is traceable in this digital age, and you never know when you're corrupting or bribing someone what could happen out of it. Entire businesses are brought down by this act. So thank you very much once again. Next, we have the amazing Caroline Chirabo, who is already on our screens. Caroline is going to speak to us on a topic called smart pivoting, and she will explain at length what pivoting is all about. But Caroline, before you start, for me, I think as an investment consultant with these amazing credentials, the question I have, how true is it that the best time to invest is during crisis? We've heard from all these business mongols who say that, crises bring so many opportunities for people who are willing to take risks, for people who are adventurous, for the prospectors, basically, strategists who are prospectors. So how to invest or not to invest, and if it's the affirmative, then where and what? So I look forward to hearing your presentation. Caroline, over to you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. And I think I'll start by apologizing to everyone on today. I think we were supposed to be concluding right about now, but if you will allow me 5 to 6 minutes to do this part, and you will also get the slides after that, I will be very grateful for your accommodation. And thank you, Cynthia, for that question. Let me tackle it.
Thank you, Carol. Sorry, Carol, before you go into it. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for making that comment actually right about now, because you're right, I hadn't looked at the time and it's exactly 12:30. What I wanted to say is we started a little late, So we kindly request you to bear with us and give us maybe 15 more minutes. For those who can patiently wait and give us 15 minutes, we'll be very grateful. After Caroline's presentation, we just have a Q&A session, which will be very brief, and then closing remarks, and then we'll be done. So Carol, you have 5 to 7 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. And thank you all the participants online today. And Cynthia, that little question on whether to invest or not, I'll tackle it briefly towards the end. But what I wanted to start with is that, for people like me who work in investment consulting, I'm always trying to match the right business to the right investor and vice versa. One of the things we look at a lot is how well a business model is responding to the market. And that very many times is the decision point for us to either put money in a business or not, but also very specifically to put backing behind an entrepreneur, simply because we try to look for the entrepreneur who understands that what works today may not work tomorrow, and they're very, very aware and very attentive to things that are changing in the market. So when we look at this crisis, for example, what it has done has been to create both a health, a personal, and an economic crisis. And when you think of a crisis being affecting an economy, it simply means that the forces of supply and demand are no longer at par for several reasons, right? So let me just highlight a few lessons that would have come out of this crisis. And I'm just going to point them out quickly. I know all my colleagues have already mentioned some of them. So one is on running a business without a strategy being damaging. And strategy is not so much about, just waking up and saying, let me just go to my shop, let me go to my business and see what happens. If you're a founder, a CEO, or someone in any kind of senior management position, even as an employee in a company, you are supposed to be looking at the business as it is now and always vis-a-vis the environment and what's changing, both in the market in which it operates and others, and always thinking about where are the opportunities for growth and for improvement. And that is kind of the basis of how strategy works. And this is not something you should wait to do every year at a retreat. Strategy has to be something that's ongoing, and it's a key responsibility to people who run and found businesses. And you find that whenever there's a crisis, having no strategy is one of the biggest things that is challenged, right? The other lesson is, you pay a very high price for poor financial management. So everyone who took that loan last year and took half of that money to buy a Benz or to, throw their lavish wedding is when, you'll hear the loudest cries from those people. That's just poor financial discipline. As a CEO, as a founder, you should know everything about how the money is flowing in and out of your business. And you should have the very strong discipline about separating personal and business finances. Any money that you leverage for a business should be able to grow a business and not grow your personal life. And we find that this is always a big challenge in emerging economies. So this is also one of the things this crisis has highlighted. The other is innovation having to be a culture. Innovation is not about technology and apps. Innovation is about working, looking for ways to improve efficiencies, operational wise, and also improve delivery of strategies. So that has to be something that you're constantly thinking about. Where there is efficiency, there is saving. Where there's efficiency, there's ways to reach your market faster. There are ways to respond quickly. And when you've not had an innovative culture and you've believed that we'll do things the same way, the same how for the next 20 years. So when opportunities like oil and gas come in, which have extreme high standardization cultures, this becomes very, very difficult for a lot of people to transition into, because they've not been thinking about how do we improve. The other is technology is not always the enemy, right? Like this is a time where you cannot say, I will not learn how to use email, or I will not learn how to use WhatsApp. Now is a time where technology can work for you. And again, if you're a CEO or a founder, this is the time where you put all those rigid perceptions aside and start to embrace which parts of technology can help with your business. And the last lesson for me here has also been your employees matter more than you think. It's amazing that during this crisis, it's employees people forget about, like drivers who are telling you things like the most efficient routes to use to get to your customers quickly. It's that salesperson who you don't pay attention to who's telling you which customer approach to use for different clients. It's the receptionist who's always calling people, who's going to help you with some of that emotional intelligence you need at the time as this to reach clients. So I've been telling a lot of CEOs, use your team as your force behind you. Don't sit and close yourself in the office. That has been the culture before. Drop it now. Work with the entire team on how to navigate the crisis and look to everyone to actually bring their A game and their ideas on board. So now let me jump quickly into what pivoting is all about. So pivoting really means adjusting your business strategy to respond to market behavior. And that can happen at different stages of a business, whether there is a crisis or not. This goes back to, having to have strategy, and strategy being aligned to what is your market saying, right? So at such a time, different market behavior in this crisis is what's informing a lot of different decisions that businesses are taking. And I've given some examples there of what pivoting could look like. I'll just share one. So it could be like deciding to focus on a whole different set of customers by positioning your business in a new market. So for example, if you've been a very mass market business and you now want to shift your product into a more niche market, that could be in response to the fact that the mass market has become maybe extremely highly competitive, or you're not able to find the kind of capital to sustain that type of growth. And then you decide, let me find a whole different niche market, which is a bit smaller, and adjusting your entire strategy around your product to serve that market. So let's go to the next slide, and I jump into what I think is important for you guys today. When you think about this crisis, the first thing I said again is, how is the market responding to your business as a result of this crisis? And for that, look at how, market purchasing behavior is looking like. So it could be that it's growing, it could be that it's declining, it's unchanged, or it has completely halted. And based on your analysis of this behavior, your strategies around how do you pivot should be based on that. So for example, if it's growing, right? If you suddenly have a product that has amassed a lot of interest because of a crisis. So for example, Zoom, which we are using now, has tripled its sales in the last month alone, right? Because of the extreme use of virtual work. But when you start to look at this, one of the first things you should consider is building out your financial projections. And if you've never done projections, now is the time to start doing them. But with the mindset that as the crisis continues, this growth may grow, but at some point things will definitely start to level out. People start to go back to offices or shift. So this is not growth that you should jump onto and start, getting all that money in and investing. This is not that time to do that. This is the time to say, okay, we're going to grow to this level. So you need to increase your efficiency and your quality of service at that point. That's what you should invest in. But make sure you understand that at a certain point, things are going to level out. So this is not the time to do a lot of capital investments in the business. Have that mindset. And also another thing, when there's a lot of growth during a crisis, is you should look into leveraging economies of scale. So again, a price there will probably be your best competitive advantage. And so if you have the ability to leverage economies of scale and reduce prices a little, that's what will guarantee more growth during that sort of growth phase because of the crisis. So the next thing is if it's declining. If business is declining, you need to analyze very carefully which product lines or customer segments are affected. So that's if you have multiple product lines. The most important strategy at that point is you need to go into cost control mode. This is when you look at all your operational production costs, and those have to start to come down. So if that means reducing your workforce, getting out of that new building that you had just started to rent, whatever the case, that is your first response. And one of the things you should do always is go into this cost control mode quickly. A lot of times people wait with this assumption that something is going to immediately change. But if you've seen with COVID, things just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So responding too late can be the difference between a big loss and a smaller one. So always, be keen on making those decisions very quickly. And I've also put a few more suggestions in there. I'm trying to race with the time. But, renegotiate any high fixed costs. So this is the time when you go to your banker, go to your creditors, go to whoever you have a lease from and start negotiating. Again, do it very, very quickly. Whatever you can do to change the terms, to bring them down, to, reduce those lease terms, the earlier the better. Because if you go quickly and say, look, business is not going to get any better, even the banker or whoever else you owe will understand that you're taking this approach, and they also need to start working on a strategy to support you very quickly. Again, scale down using innovative means. So find ways to scale down your operational costs and replace that with either something much, much cheaper or something free if you can. And then if your business has been unchanged, the most important thing here is to develop customer retention strategies. That means everyone who's already buying for you needs to stay loyal. So you need to really go into the mode of keeping them. And one of the competitive advantages here will be on improving quality and efficiency. And lastly, if your business has been completely halted, one of your options is winding up. This is when you start to divest and, call it quits. And calling it quits is nothing to be ashamed about. Business is just business. It's not your baby. It is. If there's no more market, that doesn't look like there's a future for that to happen, close that business. Your talents as a business person can be harnessed into other opportunities, and I put that point there as well. And my very last point, which is on the last slide, is about focusing on profitability. As you make changes with your business, make sure that your unit economics are positive. What I mean by that is you make sure at least that at your per unit level, your price actually covers the cost. And so your gross profit positive at least at a per unit level. Don't make the mistake of cutting down your price, keeping the per unit cost the same. And so you're actually making a loss at the very fundamental level of what makes your business a business. And yet already you know that the economy is slowing down. So if you do that, you're compounding the crisis. So whatever changes you make, just make sure that at least at the per unit cost, you're able to break even or at least be gross profit positive. Thank you very much. I'll stop at that.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for sharing with us those different strategies. Thank you very, very much. I really loved the advice you gave on how to handle the businesses in the different stages, whether it's in growth, decline, whether it's stable and unchanged, and, the different, options. Thank you very much. That was insightful, Caroline. So that brings us to the end of our panel discussion. and we are only left, although we are pressed for time, we are left with a question and answer session, and we have a couple of questions that came through, which I am going to throw to the different panelists and our keynote speaker. So quickly, I'll give each one of them like a minute or two to speak to the different questions that we have. The first question I will address to Mr. Ochichi. Mr. Ochichi, how can suppliers mainstream sustainable development goals as part of SME business strategy and ultimately business continuity? Can I repeat that, Mr.
Yes.
Ochichi?
Okay. So
the first question we have
is
how can suppliers mainstream sustainable development goals as part of SME business strategy and ultimately business continuity?
One of the things that we put my video also on, it cannot come on, so I'll just use the microphone only. When it comes to getting your business continuity and taking care of the SDGs, one of the ways that a supplier could look at it is to see to what extent, to what extent are some of these SDGs having direct relationship with your own business model. And I have a very interesting case of Noma. Noma is located in Western Uganda, and they have got a lot of farmers who are supplying the cereals that Noma wants. So what Noma has done is to go backwards and use the SDG goal of reducing poverty by saying, I'm going to reduce poverty, but in a more sustainable way by getting my, oh dear. Sorry, by getting my rural community that is poor. And I'm going to do that by giving them two things: technical skills, as well as the necessary inputs. And you do that at your cost in terms of time, and even in terms of some of your own profits. But at the end of the day, the community is also supplying you the kind of things that you want for your continued being in the value addition, value adding business of cereals. So you can address the poverty SDG by linking it to your own business and undertaking schemes that empower communities economically, supplying you, but also improving their own welfare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chichi. So the next question is going to Andrew and Daniel. And the question is, how are the oil companies supporting their current suppliers to navigate through the challenges raised by the pandemic? I think one of you did mention comprehensively, Andrew did, how they are supporting, but you can please in 1 minute speak to that question from Talo and Total's perspective. Andrew?
Yes, thank you. The support, like at the moment, specific to COVID, we have scenarios. Let's say we have scenarios where we have to send suppliers to the field, and there are restrictions of going to the field. There are restrictions of you have to be tested, you have to be having your team tested, and also having a place to secure them for 14 days prior to them starting to operate. So things like that, there are discussions with the supplier and ensuring that there is a way where Total is going to take some costs, then there are also other costs that is going to be taken by the supplier. So it is that relationship is dependent on what type of activity needs to take place. But continuity in business be it in health and safety, be it is in business compliance. Always try to work, we try to work very well with our partners, our contractors, our vendors to ensure that they match up to what is expected. Now, when they match up, it's a benefit to the company. They can use that same knowledge they have gained in any other industry. When you've matched up your HSE policies, when you've matched up your compliance, you will use it anywhere else to your own benefit. Thank you.
And if I can add, maybe, I think the best support you can give to a business today is to make sure there's still business for that business. And simply, if you're in a service industry, if you're a maintenance company, if you're a hospitality company, the fact that we have not severed the contracts and asked people not to come or the organizations not to continue providing that service, that's already supporting itself. But to enable them to continue to provide that service they're giving to us, what Andrew just spoke about, okay? How are you hand-holding the businesses? Are you helping with the regulatory requirements to meet the SOPs? Are you writing letters of introduction to the RDCs and to the district commissions, you know, to allow safe passage for these companies between Kampala and, say, to your field operations? Are you ensuring that the basics, hand sanitizers and the like are provided? Are you getting the tests done for the contractor staff and your people who are there? So all that we have continued to do throughout this period. And again, I think going, you know, if you flip this coin, the contractor companies and the suppliers, are you ready to receive that support where your systems and processes such that you can continue to even perform in such an environment we're in today? So whereas we could provide as much support as we can, you as an SME must on your side also be ready for that opportunity. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew and Daniel. So quickly, Andrew, the next question is for you. It's a question that goes, if a supplier is asked to make a conflict of interest declaration, does it mean the company suspects them of corruption? Will it disadvantage them during the bidding process? Andrew?
The straightforward answer is going to be no. One,
John?
It doesn't. One of the things you need to know is that the conflict of interest declaration works as protection. How does it work as protection? When I'm asking you to sign a conflict of interest declaration, is because there is a scenario that has been reviewed and maybe thought that you as a person, you might be in position to have a conflict of interest. And having you declare your status is to bring it to your notice that, you know, the company knows this, but the company wants to know your stand. So that in the event of the company working with you, it will not stop the company from working with you, but in the event of the company working with you, we need to know that this is your stand, this is what you're going to do, or you are in position to do A, B, C, D, and protect both yourself and the company. Because, you know, sometimes as a business, you might not be in control of everything, even up to the last detail of what your employee will do. But then, have you as a business made a stand that I declare that we don't expect this, we don't do this, and we are not planning to do it. So if you have made that declaration and you have signed it, then it will bring it to your attention. It will help you to support your employees. At the same time, it will also make the company know your stand. I think that answers the question. Hello, Cynthia.
All right, thank you very much for that response. Sorry, we've really overshot on time. Please bear with us. We have just 2 more questions that came from Michael Agea. One is going to Mr. Ochichi. Mr. Ochichi, quickly in 1 minute, please answer the question in the chat where Michael asks, I'm currently consulting for 2 farms that are moving into foreign market for agriculture produce. We are currently in the process of signing agreements with importers in UAE for Ugandan products. And then he goes on to say, they need to build their capacity in product processing, could chain infrastructure, as these are key to managing post-harvest in Uganda. Sorry, I think I missed a bit of that, but I'm sure you can also see it. So can I have bankers on the panel to help us with this? You're not a banker, but I'm sure you're very competent to respond to this. Yes.
Right. On the question of people who have the potential to export to Dubai, you can see this business is not yet operational, but they feel they have gotten opportunities to actually be exporters of agro solutions. The best I can tell these people is that right now there is a facility at Uganda Development Bank where there is a medium-term financing opportunity for up to 7 years, and it covers exactly this kind of opportunity. But the business must be extremely clearly viable because it's a greenfield investment. Anything new requires solid analysis to ensure that indeed it works out. So there is an opportunity here, and the interest rates are also friendly. So proceed to Uganda Development Bank. But I also want to emphasize that even as you go to the bank, first and foremost, try to get an independent consultant to do the feasibility before you proceed to get the bank criteria for that kind of lending. But the money is available, the interest rates are good, and the sector you are talking about is the priority sector.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chichi.
So one last question that goes to Alex. Alex, can you share the current agricultural development programs that PAO and Export Promotion Board are enforcing? In 1 minute, please.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I'll be very brief about the agricultural development program. It is being implemented in the 4 districts in the Alberta and Graben. That's Hoima, Chikuve, that's Hoima, Bulista, Noya, and Chikuve. And this is a design that has been spearheaded by the JV partners. Design is complete now and handed over to the Ministry of Agriculture. But the number of low-hanging fruits that have been implemented, during the course of this design, the number of trainings that have been undertaken, about 200 farmers have been trained in horticulture management. We've had exposure visits for livestock farmers from that Alberta and Graben to the western part of the country to benchmark and learn better practices of farming. We've had the Uganda National Bureau of Standards come in to train these farmers and other key stakeholders on the standards that are required by the sector and how to actually get to that level that is required. There are also a number of other initiatives regarding irrigation. Irrigation facilities have been availed. There are model farmers that have been availed with the irrigation facilities, and they keep on training and working with the nucleus farmers and the rest of the group they are in. So it's a project that is still ongoing. Even at the moment, there are a number of interventions that are ongoing, and we hope that Ministry of Agriculture can also come in and take on some of the initiatives because it speaks to their broader strategy. If I could just come in quickly on the relationship with the Uganda Export Promotion Board, especially on the export aspects. We talked about sustainability and continuity. The Uganda Export Promotion Board has a particular service that they call the Export readiness assessment, okay? This is a service they offer to any business enterprise that is interested in exporting. They assess the gaps that you have, and they recommend steps that you need to take to get to that level where you can comfortably export. And this information is available, but it seems it's not being put out in people's faces. So as PAU, what we usually do, we always encourage such entities to come on board in our different engagements to speak about these opportunities, so people get to know and they take on these opportunities. So that's the working relationship that we have with Uganda Export Promotion Board. And if you go to their website, I'm sure they have a list of international buyers as they work to promote export opportunities. They have a list of international buyers for the different categories of products and services. And I think that's what Michael was also interested in. So if you're out there and you are willing to export, if you have excess capacity, and if you've been providing the sector and probably it gets to a level where you need now to go to another level, you need to get in touch with the Uganda Export Promotion Board. They have these services, so it's very easy. Cynthia, thank you so much. Those are the quick comments regarding the two questions that you posed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Thank you to our distinguished panel of speaker, moderator, everybody who has contributed. I want to really say thank you to Andrew, to Carol, to Daniel, to Charles, and everybody who has contributed. But before we close, because Rosette is going to come and give us a very brief closing remarks, I would like to remind all of you that we will have a recording that you can access about this webinar, and it will be on the YouTube channel of at Total Uganda. So you can go back and share that video or recording with the rest of your colleagues, or replay to remember whatever has been spoken about this morning. So we've had a very rich array of discussions and so on, and I guess that explains why we've even overshot on time. So thank you so much for your patience, and that is it from me. But before I go off, I would like to really invite Rosette Komgisha to please give us the closing remarks. Thank you, Total, Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, and Talo for sponsoring the webinar. Over to you, Rosette.
All right, thank you. It's been an engaging and exciting discussion. I know we have to continue this discussion beyond these workshops, so feel free to reach out to myself, because my email address is available through your registration confirmation, and I'll be able to connect you to either any of the panelists or even from our internal team. I thank you, Cynthia. You guided us smoothly through the discussion, and I thank our colleagues at the back end who have been supporting us with the administrative and technology elements. We will have a third webinar, which will also continue building up on this discussion. It will be on resilience, and we will be having it on the 23rd of September. Please keep on the lookout for the details on our social media platforms. We'll also be sharing a survey that will need your support in responding to. Thank you once again. Please have a good day and stay safe. Bye-bye.